Hello everyone, this is Darian of GNB Productions, and today, on our next installment of Hedgehog Month, we will be taking a look at the Knuckles TV series. Knuckles is a spin-off Paramount Plus miniseries released in April of 2024. The series centers around Knuckles failing to grow accustomed to his life on Earth, being approached by the ghost of the old Echidna Chief Pachacamac to carry on the Echidna legacy by training Deputy Sheriff Wade Whipple in the ways of the Echidna warrior, to prepare him for a bowling tournament where he must confront his estranged father. I have lots of thoughts surrounding this show. If you couldn't tell already by the title, I am not a fan of this show. Like, at all. It's honestly among the lower end of Sonic shows for me. When a Knuckles spin-off series was announced before the release of the second movie, I was ecstatic. And after watching the second movie, I was even more excited considering how much of a step up it was from the first movie. Mainly in regards to adding elements from the games. So my mind went wild thinking of possibilities for where they could take the story of Knuckles. Maybe it'd be a prequel showcasing his life, the Echidna tribe, and his journey throughout the universe to find the Master Emerald. Maybe it'd follow the events of the second movie and depict him facing off against Rouge the Bat, or teaming up with the Chaotix. Stuff like that which would allow us to see the more grand scope of this universe. Whether or not stuff like that would have worked for a Knuckles series is a discussion for a later date, as I think it could work no problem had they just been smart about it. Anyway, then the synopsis revealed that it'd revolve around Knuckles training Wade as an Echidna warrior. And look, I don't know if I even mentioned him in my videos covering the Sonic movies, but I do like Wade. I think he's a pretty fun character in small doses. But when I read this synopsis, while I wasn't entirely against it, for a Knuckles solo series, especially after Sonic 2, I and many others were a little disappointed. Especially as it feels like we're kinda just taking a step back from Sonic 2 and going back to the more simplistic style of the first Sonic movie. But regardless, the more time passed, I had hope that the show would be good. Wade and Knux would have a fun dynamic, and the action would be pretty neat. And overall, the show would just be simple and dumb fun. And then the show released. I binged it all in the morning before I had to go to work, mind you, and I freaking hated it. I really don't think I can talk about what bothers me about this show without going over the most glaring issue it has. And if you've watched the show, you already know what I'm about to get into. This is not a Knuckles show. Hell, it's not even a Knuckles and Wade show. This entire 6-episode event, as they called it, is literally just a Wade Whipple show featuring Knuckles. There was a big uproar before the show dropped about Knuckles' lack of screen time in his own show, being in articles and whatnot. And I personally think a lot of that was exaggerated, but as a whole, yeah, Knuckles throughout the show takes a significant backseat to Wade Whipple. It's not like he's not throughout the show, as sometimes he's there, but he doesn't say or contribute much, and it all hinges on Wade. And like I said before, I liked Wade in the 2 movies. He's a fun character, and even in the show he's pretty fun. But he's really not what I came to watch this show for. In the first 2 episodes, I'd say you'd get a good even split between Knuckles and Wade antics respectively. But then we get to episode 3 and get introduced to Wade's family. Trust me, I'll get into them later. And the show significantly sidelines Knux, as he really holds no importance here. I'll go more into the greater details of episode 4 later, but this one has the least amount of Knuckles, and people are split on this episode as a whole, but at least episode 4 still semi-revolves around Knuckles in detailing his past and whatnot. The same cannot be said, however, for episodes 5 and 6, as Knuckles just doesn't have a presence at all there, and it entirely revolves around Wade and his relationship with his father, etc., and I just really don't care. Like, legitimately, I wouldn't mind the show focusing on this stuff had they made it interesting, but I really just couldn't give any less of a shit about the bowling tournament, Wade's dad, or any of it. I truly couldn't care less. The writing for this show is so odd. Like, it's not terribly written, but it's just so meh. Like, the humor is fine. Like, it's okay. I'm gonna be so honest with y'all. I think the only way for me to properly go into some of this stuff would be to very briefly go through the episodes individually. Episode 1 overall is without a doubt where the show peaks. And that's so fucking sad. This was also the only episode directed by the movie's director, Jeff Fowler, which probably speaks on its quality. The episode overall is just simple and dumb fun. We get some slice-of-life antics with the Wachowski family, and it's pretty cute. Nux' opening training montage was really damn cool, and him going after the construction workers was hilarious. Seeing this variation of the Sonic characters interact is just so fun. Even the Wade stuff in this episode isn't too terrible in my opinion. It mainly just sets the groundwork for where his character arc is going to go. The two gun agents we get introduced to, Agents Willoughby and Mason, I'll go more in detail with them when discussing the characters, but overall in this episode they had a pretty fun introduction, being rogue agents to the organization. And the buyer exists. Overall, episode 1 just did a decent job laying the groundwork for the rest of the show. Episode 2 follows Wade attempting to rescue Nux, who was captured in the first episode. And this is where the show takes a nosedive into an incredibly cartoony and goofy direction. The montage where he imagines how he's gonna save Nux was okay. Like, genuinely, on my first watch, I had the most stonewall face during the entire sequence. This isn't a kind of tone I'm against when it comes to Sonic, but all the stuff they did here and in later episodes just feels kind of generic, I'd say. This episode also gave us a pretty cool heart-to-heart between Wade and Nux, which was pretty cool, but unfortunately, moments like this won't be that prominent throughout the show. In episode 3, we meet Wade's mother, Wendy, and his sister, Wanda. Again, I'll get to them when discussing the characters, but the entire episode revolves around the Whipple family Shabbat dinner. As someone unfamiliar with most Jewish customs, I think the episode going into all this stuff was interesting, but they really did not need to dedicate the entire runtime of the episode to it. Especially seeing as this episode has fuck all to do with the title character. This is again another example of the show's attempts at humor to just be so weird. There's a moment when Knuckles comes out with how his tribe was killed by a clan of owls, and Wade's mom makes what I think was a reference to the fucking Holocaust.
Family?
My people were killed by a race of giant owls.
Owls?
I'm now the last of my tribe.
Oh. Our tribe has been through some tough times too. Minus the giant owls. He's basically Jewish.
Which was certainly a choice. There's also this joke later on in the episode about Wade jerking off to this cardboard cutout of this wrestler lady from way back when.
But what are these little indentations on her shoulders?
Nothing. Definitely not where I hugged her too hard.
Wade, these marks. They seem to be everywhere.
Okay, enough time with...
This is a Knuckles TV show, everyone. The scenes whenever Wade goes into his past with his dad are just so bare bones. There's really nothing for me to latch onto when it comes to it, other than the standard abandonment issues thing. I don't know, this episode was a bit of a nothing burger for me. Episode 4 is so intriguing because, yeah, like I said, this is the one with the least amount of Knuckles, but it also has a bunch of content surrounding him as well. A character I never mentioned because I just didn't care to, called Jack Sinclair, who was Wade's former bowling buddy, captured Wade in hopes to claim his bounty. Oh yeah, at the end of episode 2, there was a bounty put on Wade. Kinda forgot to mention that. While Wade's captured, he goes into a dreamlike state where he meets Pachacamac. Pachacamac then tells Wade the story of Knuckles in an attempt to further bring out his inner warrior. Wade decides to do this by having Wade play in a low-budget rock opera detailing Knuckles' life. Yeah, I'm very half and half on this whole thing. I was absolutely fucking flabbergasted when I first watched this. Like, I was genuinely in disbelief of what the hell I was looking at. This is where the show goes even further into the over-the-top levels of cartoon goofiness, and I just wasn't entirely into it. I do think the song and musical number as a whole is great. The vocals from everyone and the practical effects were amazing in my opinion. The rock opera goes as far to depict Knuckles fighting motherfucking Iblis and obtaining the Flames of Disaster in order to defeat him. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I don't know, the idea of Nux facing off against Iblis sounds cool, but I don't know, as someone who once hoped the films would adapt the story of 06 at some point, this feels just kind of weird. Not bad, but I guess I just wasn't expecting it. Maybe it has to do with the fact that we don't see the battle and just this stage play version is what bothers me. But the idea that Nux in the movie universe fought and defeated Iblis and obtained his power like a devil arm in Devil May Cry is still pretty damn cool. Anyway, after the whole musical sequence, Wade gets superpowers for like a good 3 seconds and faces off against Jack Sinclair. And it's just riddled with a bunch of meh humor and gags that have been done better in other movies and TV shows. And with that, in the next episode, they make it to the bowling tournament. Episodes 5 and 6 are where the show tanks even harder for me, because it is entirely based around the Whipple family drama. And, like I said, I just don't care. This show has done nothing to make me genuinely care about Wade and his dad, or any of this shit. Even the gun agents just randomly show back up, as for the last 2 episodes, they were completely absent. Knuckles is such a non-factor in these last 2 episodes, and it's either about Wade family drama, or fucking bowling. 2 things I don't give a fuck about in my Knuckles show. This show, writing-wise, is composed of a bunch of forced character drama that doesn't do a good job at keeping you invested, alongside humor that is just as bare bones and generic. I guess I'll talk about the characters now. Starting with the main character, Wade. Knuckles may be the title character, but I feel like it's best to start off with the show's actual main protagonist. Again, coming off of the movies and going into the show, Wade is a fine character. He was good in small doses within the movies, and giving him top billing was certainly a choice. Like in the show, he's not terrible, but the whole he's a loser shtick loses its luster pretty damn quick. That said, watching him grow and become less of a loser was still pretty interesting, I guess. Nothing in this show is very complex, so when I say something is interesting, don't put that much weight on it unless I make it clear it's genuinely noteworthy. Among the vast human characters this franchise had, I'd say that from the movies and going into the show, Wade managed to stay among one of the more decent ones. When he's not being a bumbling buffoon, you can find it easy enough to sympathize with the struggles he's presented with, but other than that, yeah, he was just fine. Knuckles is easily the best element of the entire show. The version of Knucks we have in the movies is genuinely amazing. Knuckles in the games is very socially inept due to his years of isolation. And I love how the movies over-exaggerate that trait to have these really fun and goofy moments. There was a bit of worry with the end of the second movie seemingly lowering his competence, but nah, he feels about the same as he does throughout the rest of Sonic 2. His ignorance to Earth's customs and the whole fish out of water thing could come off as a bit generic, but it's never overplayed and just feels like dumb fun. The problem with Knucks circles back to him being sidelined by Wade, however, because they established very bluntly within the first episode to try and establish an arc of Knuckles and his life on Earth. He can't shake off his warrior ways so easily and become used to living on Earth like Sonic and Tails. So you'd think throughout the series they would go through the means of having Wade and Knuckles go along this adventure and have Knucks fall in love with the different things this planet has to offer. And they only kind of do that, whether it be Knuckles growing and bonding with the Whipples, or appreciating their Jewish customs. They did drop little hints of him getting used to Earth, but it's just little minor stuff like that, which barely has any major presence throughout the show. The reason I bring this up is because in the finale, they have this moment where Wade gives this speech about Knuckles having something to fight for, that being a home on Earth. But it really means jack shit because we didn't focus on Knuckles at all, let alone him accepting Earth as his home. And another thing that pisses me off about this moment is that it's literally a rehash of the ending from the first Sonic movie. There's not even a clever twist to it. It's just blatantly the ending of the first movie, except significantly worse. At least in the first movie, Sonic wanting a friend was a recurring thing in the story, goddammit. Whatever. Like I said, Knucks is the best part of this show. Was done dirty by their choice to not focus on him, but regardless, he's very fun and steals the show whenever he's on screen. For the very little time he often is. I have a few thoughts on how they handle Pachacamac in this show. For those who don't know, in the games, Pachacamac was the leader of the Echidna tribe who was essentially a power-hungry war criminal who sought to obtain the power of the Chaos Emeralds. His lust for power led him and the entire tribe to be wiped out by Chaos, the god of destruction. So when a character with that specific background is changed to be this fun, chill, and kooky, wise old spirit, that's certainly a choice. I'm not entirely against it, it's just not something I really expected. The way the show chooses to use Pachacamac kind of frustrates me, because in the first episode he's basically used to kind of force in a reason for why Knuckles needs to train Wade. Because in regards to continuing on the Echidna legacy, Pachacamac doesn't choose someone like Tails or Sonic for Knuckles to train, instead he picks Wade. And holy shit, now I can't help but think about how fun this show would be if it just focused on Tails and Knuckles going on an adventure around the Earth. Anyway, other than that and the musical vision sequence in episode 4, Pachacamac basically becomes a forgotten element of the story. Which makes me wonder why he was brought in to begin with if you weren't going to go into more of the echidna's background at least, but whatever. Now, let's talk about the Whipples, or specifically, Wendy and Wanda Whipple. Wendy, Wade's mom, is honestly just a fucking sweetheart. I adore the sweet, caring mother archetype character like Susan in the Ted TV show, which you should definitely watch, by the way. And Wendy gave me those vibes as she just wants the best for her kids and family, and I can't get enough of her. She's a simple but very effective character. Not groundbreaking, as if we never see her again, you won't see me crying about it. But regardless, I thoroughly enjoyed her character. The same cannot be said for Wade's sister Wanda, who was easily among the top worst human characters to grace this franchise. From the first episode she appears in, she's almost instantly unlikable, to a cartoonish degree. Why? Because she's fucking annoying. Now I know what some of you might say, Darion, that's the point, she's supposed to be the annoying older sister. Listen, when it comes to characters that are meant to be portrayed as annoying, there are many factors one must take into consideration. The first of which being is charm. If you're going to have a character that is written to be annoying to the other characters, you gotta give them the right amount of charm that makes them endearing to your audience. Otherwise, they're just going to come off as unlikable. And two, and this is the most important thing here, for me at least, who are they meant to be annoying to? The characters or the audience? Because more often than not, with annoying characters, they're solely meant to be viewed as annoying by the other characters within the story. Characters like Wanda are meant to be annoying strictly to characters like Wade or Wendy. I, as an audience member, should not be unironically irritated along with them. Instead of the audience being in on the joke, they inadvertently become a part of it. If that makes any sense, I'm not good at metaphors, I'm sorry. It's like when Deadpool is often written to be super obnoxious and way more irritating than he should be, and when people voice their complaints, you get others saying, well, that's the point, he's supposed to be annoying. Yeah, motherfucker, to the characters within the story, not the fucking audience! And that's the problem with Wanda. She's written to be super obnoxious and irritating with none of the charm or endearing qualities to actually make her likable, resulting in her not only pissing off the characters, but the viewers as well. Stuff like her stabbing her brother with a fork in the middle of an argument is just so... Why? Like, I guess it's funny, but it's just so out there that I'm left confused as to what her whole deal is. And her refusing to be saved by him and opting to dislocate her thumb so she can get out of the handcuffs herself is... So... why? Why is she like this? It's not funny, charming, or quirky. It's just annoying. I'm sorry I've said that word so many times, but it's true. I couldn't stand her at all throughout the entire runtime. There is a joke in the penultimate episode where I think they threatened to kill her, and Wade is just A-okay with it. This made me hysterical, as I was right there with him. But it's just something else that enforces how fucking weird this family is. Anyway, the villains. Plain and simply put, all the villains in this show suck ass. The two agents, Mason and Willoughby, are... fine? They were mildly entertaining with their whole Team Rocket routine, but the story doesn't do them any favors because after the first 2 episodes, they become such a non-factor throughout the rest of the story, it's not even funny. I do like how Agent Willoughby's character was used to showcase Gunn's more shady nature, however. In the penultimate episode, she gives a speech about how since Sonic & Co. are safely living on Earth, she still views them as a threat. The more she pushed back against Gunn for letting Sonic & Co. roam free, they basically demoted her, leaving her to do smaller operations like the fake wedding in Sonic 2. That's some neat world building I would have loved to have seen more of. Other than that, the two are just... meh. Another thing that kills them for me is whenever they tried their damnedest to make them more intimidating than they actually are. Maybe it's the performances, but I don't know, I just couldn't take them seriously. Same goes for the buyer, whose name is literally never uttered in the actual show. Seems like a pretty big oversight. He's someone who used to work under Robotnik while under a division of Gunn before it got its current name. He's a villain that exists, like he's here to get Knuckles' power to fuel his machines that he sells on the black market. Which is well and cool, but I don't know, they don't really do anything interesting with him. He barely has a presence throughout the show up until the finale where he and Knucks have a big showdown. And it's just... meh. Pistol Pete, Wade's father, is also a villain that exists. Fuck me, I am really struggling with finding things to say about these characters. He's kind of just your stereotypical asshole dad, except he's British. but also possibly not at the same time. I think, yeah, he's pretty lame. Same goes with the rest of the villains. The cast, for the most part, did a decent job. I really do have to commend Adam Pally for his portrayal of Wade. Say what you will about the character, but performance-wise, Pally did a great job as the character. He does a great job at making Wade super endearing and likable, and that goes for the movies as well as the show. Same can of course be said for Idris Elba as Knuckles. I know I forgot to gush about his performance in my Sonic 2 video, but I can't stress how good it is. It's not my preferred take on the Knuckles voice, but it works so damn well for the movies. Stockard Channing as Wendy did an incredible job as well. The writing and direction for Eddie Patterson did her absolutely no favors for her performance as Wanda. I admittedly haven't seen Patterson in that many other projects. Apparently she played Fran, the maid in Knives Out. I've only watched the Knives Out movies once or twice, like 1 or 2 years ago, so I can't remember off the top of my head what her performance was like in the film. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say she did a pretty decent job for however little screen time she was given, from what I can remember. Whereas here, good God, they did her so fucking dirty. Kid Cudi and Ellie Taylor as Agents Mason and Willoughby did a decent job. You can just tell the two, especially Kid Cudi, are having a ton of fun, and I can't fault them for that. But they don't really do much to leave an overall impression. Same goes for the buyer. The writing and especially performance from the actor don't do much to make him feel any more interesting. He also has the problem of not being as intimidating as they want you to think he is, like the two agents. Pistol Pete, played by fucking Cary Elwes, was a genuine surprise. And I can safely say he did a pretty decent job as well. The writing for the character may have been very meh, but the performance almost makes up for it. Christopher Lloyd as Pachacamac works a bit better than I initially expected it would. Now the direction may be a bit goofier, but overall I think it was a pretty good pick. And can imagine if they go the adventure route, bringing him back in a more dramatic light could be pulled off pretty well. And for the little amount of screen time they have, Tika Sumpter as Maddie, Colleen O'Shaughnessy as Tails, and Ben Schwartz as Sonic all did a great job. Like I said, the cast overall did a decent job. Something else I gotta praise about this show are the visuals and action, two things I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were. All the CG characters in here look just about as good as they did in the movies. Save for Sonic's ugly face wrinkles, but that's besides the point. And the action and fight choreography was absolutely top notch. All the fights with the two agents were way better than I ever could have expected them to be. All the fun ways they play around with the different types of tech using Knuckles as powers is just so damn cool. That rotating camera shot in episode 3 where Knuckles and Wendy are both taking on the bounty hunters had no reason to go that hard. And the final battle with the buyer with Knuckles using the Flames of Disaster kicked so much ass. I also just love how the Sonic characters are ruthless murderers in these movies, because as far as Sonic knows, he killed the shit out of Robotnik, and Nux for sure killed the hell out of the buyer. Just something I find to be a little funny. The soundtrack for this show was pretty good. I love the use of the warrior being the main theme of the show. Since watching it, I have yet to get it out of my head and listen to it almost every day. But other than that, I can say that the soundtrack was just pretty good. This show is an example of what I like to call licensed music hell, where the songs are kind of thrown in there just because. I want to assume they want to touch on some folks' nostalgia bone. For fuck's sake, this is another video game related project that has a I Need a Hero sequence. When will it end? But whatever. Like I said, the soundtrack is pretty good. Overall, the Knuckles show is just not good. When it's not focusing on Knuckles, you know, the thing we all came to see, we're focusing on super forced and boring character drama, a tone that dives way too far into silly and cartoon territory for my liking, incredibly boring characters and storylines I couldn't give any less of a shit about, and when it does focus on Knuckles, he really isn't given that much character focus as the show prioritizes all the previous stuff that I mentioned. The characters are boring, the story and character arcs are meh, the performances are decent, and the action was pretty good, but the writing really leaves a lot to be desired, and as a whole, this show to me is just embarrassing. When I was starting to write this script, I was going back and forth on whether or not that statement was a bit harsh, but the more I got into it and saw how this show just has so little to offer in terms of quality, I don't think I could put it any other way. I know there's a rumored Shadow spin-off show in the works, but if it's anything like this, I pray to God they just scrap it. Because I unironically would rather this not exist at all. Like, I'm not even kidding. It's just such a nothing burger of a show that it might as well not exist at all. Sorry if that sounds harsh, but I can't help but be honest. The Knuckles show was a complete and utter embarrassment. So, with all that said, if you agree or disagree with anything I've said in this video, let me know right down there in the comments below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. This is Darian of GNB Productions, and take care.